Hi, my name is Darren Joseph from TCJA, and we're the team that seeks to demystify that sometimes confusing world of international tax. And today I want to talk a little bit more about the One Big Beautiful Bill, the OBBBA, and the genius, the relief that comes from no more downward attribution. So the cross-border tax rule was horrified when Section 958B4 was repealed by the Tax Cut and Jobs Act back in December 2017. We were equally relieved in July 2025 when it was reinstated by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And a new section, 951B, was enacted as a more refined solution to the problem that the repeal of 958B4 had meant to address. So let's get into it a little bit more. So before its repeal by the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, Section 958B4 provided that for purposes of applying various rules related to controlled foreign corps or CFCs and their U.S. shareholders, Section 318A3A, Attribution to Partnerships and Estates, Section 318A3B, Attribution to Trusts, and Section 318A3C, Attribution to Corporations, will not be applied to consider a U.S. person as constructively owning stock that is owned by a person who is not a U.S. person, right? So what basically it was meant to do, it was trying to address corporate inversions, where people, an owner would be onshore or in the U.S. and then next day it's outside of the U.S., and trying to remove some of its assets and operations from the U.S. tax net. So that's what that's what it was originally about. But anyway, there was some control on the downward attributions before the TCJA, and then as a result of TCJA, it just went crazy. So like anything and everything seemed to be pulled in to the U.S. tax net. Okay. So in describing the reason for repealing 958B4, the conference report cited transactions designed to decontrol subsidiaries by using Section 958B4 to convert CFCs to non-CFCs despite continuous ownership by U.S. shareholders, which is what I'm saying. However, instead of adopting a narrow rule limiting the scope of the change to targeted transactions described in the conference report, Congress went crazy and just repealed the provision altogether. The repeal caused many foreign corporations with little or no direct or indirect U.S. ownership to become CFCs, and it wreaked havoc with other areas of tax law as well. It was, no, seriously, it was nuts. Under the OBBBA, Section 958B4 has been restored to its rightful place in the code effective Jan 1, 2026. For the case of calendar year CFCs anyway. Now, while the OBBBA restored Section 958B4, it also added a new Section 951B to the code to address, albeit more narrowly and therefore more sensibly, we think, the concerns that originally led to the TCJA's ill-conceived repeal of Section 958B4. The basic idea of Section 951B is to enact a parallel but limited CFC regime that applies solely to foreign-controlled U.S. shareholders. And you have this idea of FCUSS, this new acronym to add, FCUSS, foreign-controlled United States shareholders, of FCFCs, which are foreign-controlled foreign corporations, right? So, Section 951BB defines an FCUSS as any U.S. person that would be a U.S. shareholder of a foreign corp if, 1, Section 951B were applied by requiring more than 50% ownership by voter value by the U.S. person, and 2, the constructive ownership rules of Section 958B were applied without regard to Section 958B4. So, Section 951BC defines an FCFC as a foreign corporation other than a CFC that would be a CFC if Section 957A were applied by substituting 1, foreign-controlled United States shareholders for United States shareholders, and 2, a reference to Section 958B other than paragraph 4 thereof in place of the reference to Section 958B. Or to put it more simply, because you want this more simply, any foreign corporation that is not a CFC is an FCFC if it has at least one FCUSS. Hope that makes sense. So, under Section 951BA1, the rules of Subpart F, other than Sections 951A, 951B, and 957, are applied to an FCUSS of an FCFC separately from and in addition to the application of those rules without regard to Section 951B by substituting two things. One, references to an FCUSS. So, And just to remind you, foreign-controlled United States shareholders, that's an FCFS, right? In place of references to U.S. shareholder, and two, references to an FCFC, so foreign-controlled foreign corp, in place of references to CFC throughout. So, Section 951BA2 similarly provides that Section 951A and other provisions of Subpart F, as provided by the Secretary, are applied with respect to an FCUSS by treating each reference to U.S. shareholder as a reference in FCUSS and each reference to CFC as a reference in FCFC, right? So overall, the reinstatement is a great thing, both for U.S. shareholders who have interest in foreign corporations and for inbound investors seeking to access the portfolio interest exemption, which is a whole separate thing. And the enactment of Section 951B is a more narrowly targeted solution to the inversion problem that the ill-considered repeal sought to address in the first place. Again, my name is Darren Joseph from HTJ.tax. If you want to find out more, please visit our website, and we'll see you next time. Bye.